You never really expect the war for your peace to come, dressed in designer sunglasses and a smug smile. When I bought my dream house, a place with a private pool, the quiet kind of victory you work your whole life for, I didn't expect the biggest problem would be the neighbor next door. Not noise, not crime. Just one woman who believed my success was some kind of mistake, one she had the right to correct. This isn't just a story about a pool. It's about entitlement power, and what happens when someone thinks your property, your peace, your existence is up for debate. And trust me, when you finally draw the line, people show you exactly who they are. This is how it all unraveled. Derek Langston hadn't just bought a house. He'd bought a symbol nestled in the prestigious Briarwood Pines of Charleston, South Carolina. His new home stood as a quiet monument to everything he'd worked for. Decades of grinding through school late nights, building tech startups, and years of being underestimated in boardrooms had led to this: a sun-drenched patio, a private pool glittering beneath Carolina skies, and the peace of a gated neighborhood. For Derek, that pool wasn't luxury. It was a rival, but within weeks of moving in, that peace was breached by a woman with a sharp voice, perfectly trimmed hedges, and an entitlement so ingrained it felt rehearsed. Linda Parkerson never smiled. Not at Derek, not even at her own mailman. But the first time he caught her stretched out on his pool float, shades on arms behind her head, like she owned the sky, he thought it had to be some kind of mistake. "Excuse me," Derek said politely, stepping out onto his patio. "I'm not sure you realize, but this is my backyard." Linda didn't even flinch. She tilted her head, let out a sigh, and adjusted her sunglasses. "It's just a pool," she said, as if he were the one out of place. "Don't be dramatic. We're neighbors, neighbors." That word rolled off her tongue like an accusation. At first, Derek gave her the benefit of the doubt. Maybe she misunderstood property lines. Maybe she thought the HOA had some shared arrangement. He didn't want to start conflict. His first month in a new home. But it wasn't a one-time mistake. It became routine. Some days she'd be there alone. Other days she brought friends, laughing, eating snacks from bags she'd leave floating in the shallow end. Once, she even used his guest towels and left them balled up wet and muddy on his deck chairs. When Derek confronted her again, her tone was different. "If you can afford all this," she said, gesturing around, "then why act so selfish? This whole community was designed for people like us. People like us." Those three words hit harder than the others. And she didn't mean neighbors. She didn't mean homeowners. She meant her, not him. Derek's jaw tightened, but his voice stayed even. "I bought this house. I pay taxes on this land. You have no right to be here," Linda scoffed. "People. Like you always think everything has to be yours. That's not how it works around here." That night, Derek sat alone by the pool, the water still rippling where she'd walked through it. His thoughts raced, not just with anger, but with disbelief. He'd made it, followed every rule, succeeded by every measure society said mattered. And yet in her eyes, it still wasn't enough to earn basic respect. Not long after he installed cameras, a lock on the side gate, a sign that read, "Private property, no trespassing." He hoped it would be enough, but Linda wasn't done. And somewhere deep inside, Derek knew this wasn't just about property lines. It was about something bigger. It was a Wednesday when Derek heard the metallic rattle from his backyard gate. Not the wind, not an animal. It was the unmistakable sound of desperation clawing at brass. He glanced at his phone. Motion detected camera 3. He tapped the screen, and there she was, red-faced and fuming, shaking the gate like a child denied candy. Linda Parkerson, again. She wasn't even trying to be subtle. Her lips moved rapidly, muttering to herself as she yanked on the lock. Derek turned up the volume. "How dare he lock me out? My taxes pay for this street too." There was a bitter chill in her voice, less about access and more about dominance denied. Then she pulled out her phone. 5 minutes later, the sirens came. Derek met the police on his front porch, calm and composed, hands visible. He knew how this could go. One wrong move, one raised voice, and suddenly he'd be the threat. "Good afternoon, officers." "May I help you?" he asked. One officer, a middle-aged man with a Charleston drawl and tired eyes, glanced over his clipboard. Neighbor called. About a disturbance, he said. Claims she was threatened, says she was locked out intentionally. Derek didn't flinch. Would you like to see the footage? The younger officer raised an eyebrow. Footage. Derek held up his phone screen, already cued to the security app. A minute-long video. Linda rattling the gate, shouting, pacing, then pretending to dial 911 with the poise of a bad soap actress. The officers watched in silence. The older one handed the phone back. "Ma'am," he called toward the backyard where Linda stood, arms crossed, practically vibrating with rage. "You don't have any legal access to this pool. This is his property." Her mouth opened, then closed. She stammered. But he's being unreasonable. "Ma'am, you step foot on this property again and we'll have to arrest you for trespassing. Do you understand?" Derek watched her deflate like a balloon. No apology, no acceptance. Just a retreat, masked as indignation. She stormed off, slamming her front door like she could shut down justice with a noise. Derek exhaled. But he knew this wasn't over because people like Linda didn't let go of power. They tried to reclaim it louder, angrier, and with more lies than before. That night, over a bourbon and the soft splash of pool water, Derek made a decision. He pulled out his laptop. He wasn't looking for revenge. He was looking for understanding. But what he found instead was a legacy of rot. Old newspaper clippings, public records, Linda's maiden name traced back to a line of Deep South aristocracy, and hidden beneath church donations and country club memberships was a darker truth. Her family had deep documented ties to white supremacist groups, grandfathers in robes, marches, obituaries, that never mentioned their hate but praised their community service. And suddenly, it all clicked. Linda didn't just feel entitled to his pool. She felt entitled to everything he represented, and worse, felt rage at the fact that he had earned it. He closed the laptop, his jaw clenched. This wasn't just a property dispute, this was a generational reckoning, and Linda had just picked a fight with the wrong neighbor. The expose went live on a Friday morning. The headline was unflinching. Entitled "Neighbor Calls Police on Black Homeowner Over Pool Access, Generations of Racism Uncovered Below." It was a picture of Linda mid-shriek, hand raised in indignation, caught on Derek's security cam. The story, meticulously written by a local civil rights journalist, unpacked not only the recent altercations but also the deeper roots of her behavior, a family lineage tied to white supremacy, her pattern of harassment, and her attempt to weaponize the police against a black man for exercising his right to own and protect his property. Within hours, it was everywhere. Twitter, Reddit, TikTok clips, dissecting the footage, local news, national blogs. Pool Karen started trending. By noon, the HOA office was flooded with calls from concerned residents and a few reporters. Derek stayed inside his phone, buzzing non-stop with interview requests and support messages from people he didn't even know. Linda, on the other hand, lost control of the narrative for the first time in her life. That afternoon, she stormed onto Derek's property, again. No gate rattling this time, just a full-on march, red-faced teeth, gritted phone clenched in her trembling hand. "You did this," she shrieked. "You think you're some kind of hero. You're nothing but a liar and a coward." Derek stood calmly at the edge of his porch phone, recording. "You walked onto my property," again, he said evenly. She took a step closer. "You're ruining my life," she spat. "You and your little sob story. Nobody cares." "You care," Derek said. "That's why you're here. I should have never let you move in. People like you." That was it. The sirens had already been coming. A neighbor had seen her enter the yard and, given the recent media coverage, didn't wait to make the call. When the cruiser pulled up, Linda actually tried to flee. She turned and bolted barefoot through the side yard, muttering curses and threats under her breath. But she didn't get far. One misstep, one loose brick, and Linda fell hard right into Derek's rosebushes. By the time the officers caught up, she was scratched, bleeding slightly, and howling about conspiracies, sabotage, and affirmative action mobs. They didn't hesitate. She was handcuffed, read her rights, and placed in the back of the squad car. and that's when the crowd began to gather. Not a mob, just neighbors. People who had once waved politely and looked away. People who had seen Derek mowing his lawn, grilling on Sundays, walking his niece along the sidewalk. And people who were tired of Linda's reign of petty terror. Some clapped. Others took quiet videos. But one woman, an elderly white neighbor named Mrs. Carmichael, walked up to Derek, her voice trembling. "I've lived on this street for 40 years, she said softly. "I'm ashamed I didn't say anything sooner." What she did was disgusting. "You didn't just protect your home. You stood up for all of us." Derek blinked. That was the moment he realized this wasn't just his story anymore. That night, the HOA released a public statement removing Linda from all positions and issuing a formal apology to Derek. They also revised their bylaws banning use of private property for any community convenience without written consent and mandating anti-discrimination training for board members. By Monday, Linda's house had a for sale sign out front. By Wednesday, she was facing 3 charges: trespassing, filing a false police report, and attempted assault. And by the end of this month, Derek's pool wasn't just a backyard escape. It was a symbol. Kids laughed in it during weekend. BBQ's neighbors came by to say hello. Someone painted a mural on the outside of the pool fence. Vibrant colors swirling around the words. Respect is not a privilege. It's the foundation.